Hey everyone, welcome to another video of DC NBA Junkie, where I'll be discussing NBA related content every single day. I'm taking a detour from the NBA Team Future series and discussing an ESPN article regarding to the news speculation for the NBA's return. The league has been stopped for over 2 months, and the players and front office are looking for the NBA to decide whether the season will resume or not. And I'll be talking about Adrian Wojnarowski's story discussing so. Let's get to it. But before I begin, make sure to leave a like on the video and drop down in the comments section any suggestions for future video ideas or even ideas for future series, because any suggestions from you guys are highly advised and recommended. And lastly, make sure to subscribe. We're all here for some fresh and nice NBA content. Now, without further ado, let's take a look into the plans for the NBA season to return. First off, I want to talk about the timetable for the NBA return. And that is kind of estimated to be like late July, but that is like a combination of the NBA's plan that they are hoping to make soon enough, but they're really waiting till like the last minute to make their decision of when they're going to announce that the season will return. And if that process is to happen, then they've said that it will probably take a plan of like 2 weeks of recalling players back to their markets or where they play, 1 to 2 weeks of individual training, so not just private individual workouts, not working with the team, and then eventually a 2 to 3 week training camp. And then they believe through that process starting in like June and all those weeks combined, then like late July, maybe in August, and that the season could return. And I think it's important because this timetable for the return it's good to hear that the NBA is making like a plan and they're having ideas as to what they want to do. However, they're still waiting, and they've said that they don't want to make a decision right now, especially if things don't work out, revenue issues come up. They don't want to make a decision as soon as they possibly can, because they know that something may arise and they need to be as very flexible as they can right now. But they're waiting really long, and the problem with waiting very long is that teams have been pushing for the NBA to make a decision because they want to know what their teams are going to have to be doing moving forward. They want to know if players need to be working hard or they need to be preparing for this season or not, and if teams should be thinking about their long-term plans right now, because they're just in a situation where they can't do that right now. So the timetable is looking to be around late July, which is great to hear that the NBA's got some news on what's going to happen in the future. Next, I want to go right into the locations for these games if the NBA were to return. And this is looking like that the markets would most likely, the idea that there's like a contrast between what the NBA and the league wants and the front office would want and the teams. And the teams are kind of considering just like they would like to have temporary training camps that they would build, that it would use to help return for the season prior to the season play. But the executives kind of are pushing for these return to the markets so that way they can prepare for the season, and then they can start working as a team. And this is kind of a big contrast, because there's this big struggle of like thinking about how this could delay some players recoveries and training. For example, there was the idea of like players who play for Toronto, the Toronto Raptors, they're probably not living in their markets right now just because of just not the unlikelihood that Toronto's where they're living right now. It's just not, it's out of the country, it's not the best weather there. And so the problem that they would have to return to their market, they have to return to Toronto in order to prepare for this season. But there's a struggle that they don't really want to do that because they would hinder and delay their training, and that's just not the most ideal situation for these teams. And the league wants these guys to return to their markets to prepare, but they're struggling because they're not confirming. There's no confirmation that the season will continue, and players don't really want to return to their markets. But it's ultimately just what's gonna probably result, and I've already said of a team plan that's just gonna have to happen in order for the NBA to resume. And it's just the NBA would need these players to quarantine if they had to return to their markets at first. Then they would be able to go resume and go back to training facilities and go play at specific locations. All right, after that, there's just probably one of the biggest concerns for the plans for the turn of the season. It's their MBA standings, because they're trying to decide right now if non-playoff teams are going to, play or just see their summer. Because there are teams like the Knicks who clearly have really nothing to play for except either, improving their lottery odds or, worsening them. And then there are teams like the Grizzlies, the Pelicans. The Grizzlies are in the playoffs, but like the Pelicans, I guess the Spurs, the Kings. Those are teams that are still trying to play for that 8th seed. So like, not making it into this playoff pool, or at least continuing the season for them would kind of suck, because they would have they were pretty close to making the 8th seed. So there's that struggle of figuring out what's the best thing for these non-playoff teams to play, or if the summer should happen for them, because the NBA has also mentioned that the regular season and the playoff structure has remained uncertain, and the members of the league board are believing that the NBA would believe that they don't want to bring back every team, and they want to kind of go to as few teams as they can. But I still think they need to acknowledge that there are those teams, especially in the Western Conference, that are in contention for that 8th seed. I think in the Eastern Conference, I know that there's a gap. It's somewhere, whether that's 7th to 8th or 8th to 9th. But regardless, I know that the Western Conference non-playoff teams that are right there are much more significant than the Eastern Conference. So that's just something I feel like it's something important that the NBA needs to think about. And the reasoning for why they feel that the NBA, that the non-playoff teams shouldn't play, is it's just an unnecessary time investment for these bottom teams. They have to prepare and all this just to play maybe a couple games that don't really mean anything for them, or could actually be more detrimental than beneficial. And then it could also lower COVID-19 spread risks, because they're having less teams play. It's pretty self-explanatory. However, maximum revenue could be seen if they let these bottom teams play. So there's that figuring out right now. There's that issue in the standings of whether or not they're going to let these non-playoff teams play or not. And then lastly, this is the wrap up for this, and the overall idea of this, their plans. And it's the NBA is pressuring the league to make a decision, because NBA teams and just executives, front office people are pressuring the league to make this decision, because this affects not only if they're going to go back to training camps, the timetable for that, preparation for the season, and this also just affects revenue for not only the team but for the league. So the league needs to make a decision that can benefit them financially. If they really feel like there's just no way that this season can happen because there's too many risks, or the revenue that it may not recover as much revenue as they need, then they may not bring the season back. But they've had meetings with the NBPA, the National Basketball Players Association, and they clearly want to bring the season back. So I can see that why these players really want the league to bring the season back. So I think the NBA is really working to the last minute to make sure that they can have a solid plan of everything they're working on to bring the season back. And I think they will, because they've been working with Walt Disney World in Orlando to talk about potential locations for to play games. And I think that's one of the locations that they desired. And then second is that the decisions on whether or not all these teams play, and even if there's a regular season at all, kind of continues. They've discussed maybe there won't even be a regular season at all, although I think it's a good thing to do to figure out what the remainder of the teams, what's going to happen to them. So, but even if they do that, then it's not beneficial for those bottom teams, and it can actually be more harmful for them, because they might ruin their their seeding odds. So at the end of the day, the NBA still has a lot of things they need to sort out, but I really do think they should bring the season back. And whether that is just a 16-seeded, reseeded playoff series of 7 games, hopefully, or it's that they have to play 5 games with the teams, I think they just need to do something to keep these fans entertained, and so that these players can get back to playing again. And yeah, with that being said, that will be the end of today's video of the NBA plans to return to the season. If you enjoyed, make sure to subscribe and leave a like on the video, and drop a comment down below about what you felt about the video, and for the ideas for the future NBA Team Future series, anything for that. then just drop those below. And yeah, thank you very much for enjoying the video, and have a good day.